Hey guys, so you have a Road of Life assignment that is due this Friday, April 24th by midnight. So it's a pretty straightforward assignment. I'm just asking you to reflect on your life and Siddhartha's life. Your experiences don't technically have to be exact parallels to Siddhartha's. So, for example, if you were to say the first meaningful event in Siddhartha's life was when he stood his ground against his dad because he wanted to leave home. You don't have to think of a similar time that you stood your ground because you wanted to do something or leave home. Instead, I want you to maybe reflect on the novel and say, these are the 10 most important events in Siddhartha's life, and this is why these events were important. And they don't all have to be positive, uplifting events because, believe it or not, we can learn as much from our defeats, as much from the valleys in our life as we can learn from the high points or the peaks. So you might want to try and include both for you and Siddhartha. So it's a 100-point assignment. I'm going to have you do it in Google Slide format. I'll show you an example in a second, or PowerPoint format. I'll show you an example of that too. Or if you want to dabble into Prezi, I'm definitely not technologically savvy enough to deal with Prezi, but you're welcome to use that as well. And just send me the Google slide, the PowerPoint, or the Prezi link. So basically, history is the written record of what one person thinks is important during a certain period of time. And one of the most rewarding jobs of any historian is to decide what events are important. So this activity is going to allow you to practice this skill using your own life along with Siddhartha's life. So the minimum requirements are your road to life will include 10 events that have shaped who you are today and 10 events that have shaped Siddhartha's life. Each event should have an illustration. They can be actual pictures of you. They can just be Google images that you found online. Um, because of the nature of how we're doing this, usually it's a poster, but since we're doing this in PowerPoint format, you don't need a line connecting each event. But your slides should be, colorful, interesting to look at. The page should be well used. And each event needs a thoughtfully written description explaining what the event was and why it was significant, both for you and Siddhartha. And then the events should obviously be arranged in a logical fashion from earliest to most recent. If you wanted to do the last 2 or 3 slides as goal setting slides for yourself, saying that, the eighth most important event in your life will be graduating college. And then maybe the ninth most important event in your life would be buying a house. Feel free to project to the future for the last 2 or 3. But the first, 7 or 8 should definitely be actual experiences that you have lived through. Um, the Road to Life maps have to be neatly completed, thoughtfully edited. That means spelling, grammar. Um, the visual appeal will definitely be a factor in the scoring. And then, like I said, April 24th by midnight to my email, which is gwilliscroft@ocsdnj.org. So I did like a little mock up Google slide might look something like this, your opening slide, and then you might have 10 slides that look similar to this, your first meaningful event. And here's a picture of a little girl with a soccer ball. My first meaningful moment was when I began playing soccer. I was only 4 years old, but it changed my life. At first, we were just like a bunch of bees circling a hive. As the years passed, I learned about skills, teamwork, leadership, friendship, positivity, and a good work ethic. And then for Siddhartha, we have a man here standing his ground, and that was his first meaningful event when he stood his ground because he wanted his father's permission to join the ascetics and explore the world on his own. And then each slide would be patterned after this slide. And you can color your background to make it pop a little bit more, use bold for the font so it's easier to see. Just play around with it a little bit to make it visually appealing. For the PowerPoint one, you can, pick your layout that you want and then add your details on that as well. If you pick a really basic pattern, you can go over here to design ideas after you complete your slide on PowerPoint and click that. And it does a really good job of, giving you some different options of how you could format the page. So like, for example, if I were to change these like this and then go to design ideas, usually it will give me some suggestions on what I could do. I'm not sure why it didn't do that, but see, like this, it gave me a suggestion to make that a little more colorful and make it pop. So that can be kind of fun to work with on PowerPoint if you choose to do PowerPoint. And I also wanted to point out that I think we will be moving on after this week to a unit that's it says 3-day plan, but this is actually going to be a 2-week plan. It's going to be you guys reading a short story and then a play version of that short story and completing questions for both of those, and then comparing and contrasting. It's the same story, but in a short story versus a play format. So I was just curious, like, which one appeals to you more? Which one do you think was more suspenseful? It's actually the story of a woman who is abused by her husband and ultimately kills him and gets away with murder. So that's going to be our activity for April 27th to May 8th. And then for the remainder of the school year, we are going to be doing a very, very, very abridged look at Frankenstein. The real story of Frankenstein is not the story that you may or may not have heard. It's actually, he's a very educated creation, very well spoken. And I'm basically going to give you a nutshell summary of what happens, who are some characters in the story that you might not have known about, the background to Mary Shelley writing Frankenstein. So it's going to be Frankenstein without having to actually read Frankenstein, because the story of Frankenstein is about the monsters that we create. For example, people who are bullied and resort to violence as a result of that bullying, those are monsters that we as a human race have created with our acts of meanness. Even this current pandemic could be considered a monster that we created as a human race, because some hypothesize that this was not the result of someone eating a bat in a Wuhan wet market, but could have been maybe the product of a lab that got out of control. Who knows? We don't really know the answer to that, but either way, whether it's eating a bat or bioterrorism, these are monsters that we as a human race have inflicted on ourselves. And that's the story of Frankenstein. He starts out as a good, kind, caring, loving soul. And through his experiences with humanity and the worst that humanity has to show, he resorts to acts of violence. So we're going to look at that and talk a little bit about that and do a little bit of exploration. But I'm going to try and end the year educationally, but without overwhelming you guys. So that is it for your assignment due this Friday and what we're looking at doing for the remainder of the school year. Thanks for listening. I will talk to you later.